Welcome to Deep Cuts, the sanctuary for albums that never got their due, the misfits of the discography, the sonic outcasts that dared to be different. I'm your host, the Metal Mistress, slicing through the noise to resurrect the records that slipped through the cracks. This isn't about greatest hits or chart toppers. This is about the albums that confused critics, alienated fans, or simply got buried under the weight of hype. From glam bands going grunge to thrash legends chasing radio play, we're digging up the bold, the bizarre, and the beautifully misunderstood. So grab your headphones and your skepticism, because in this temple of the overlooked, every track is a revelation, and every cut runs deep. Mötley Crüe, Generation Swine. By the mid-1990s, Mötley Crüe were no longer the kings of the Sunset Strip. The leather, the lipstick, the neon excess, all of it had been eclipsed by Seattle flannel and industrial gloom. Grunge had gutted glam. Alternative rock had rewritten the rules, and the crew were staring down irrelevance. But in true Mötley fashion, they weren't going quietly. They were going weird. In 1997, Vince Neil returns to the fold. After years apart, the prodigal frontman was back, and fans expected a triumphant comeback. A return to the sleaze-soaked anthems of Girls and the swagger of Dr. Feelgood. What they got instead was Generation Swine, a Frankenstein's monster of industrial beats, electronic samples, and distorted chaos. It was the sound of a band trying to claw its way into a new era. And not everyone survived the experiment. Inside the studio, the pressure was suffocating. Elektra Records wanted a hit, the band wanted redemption, and the fans demanded Vince Neil back at the microphone after years apart. Neil's return was framed as the key to restoring Mötley Crüe's identity, but instead of simply recapturing their old sound, the label and producers pushed for reinvention. Nikki Sixx and Tommy Lee were determined to drag the crew into the industrial-tinged future, layering samples and electronic grit, while Neil struggled to reclaim his place in a band that no longer sounded like the one he'd left. Every session became a tug-of-war, nostalgia versus innovation, sleaze versus survival. The result was an album forged under pressure, a product of both reunion and resistance. Pressure was on the band to move forward and go backwards at the same time, and it would have an undeniable impact on the finished product. Chaos reigned. Nikki Sixx and Tommy Lee were obsessed with dragging the band into the future, layering samples, loops, and electronic textures. Vince Neil, freshly reunited, wanted to belt out the kind of arena-ready choruses that had made him famous. The clash was audible, Neil's voice often buried in the mix, the band's identity split between nostalgia and reinvention. The album opened with Find Myself, a snarling declaration of self-destruction.
I gotta find myself some love. I gotta find myself some drugs.
Then came Afraid, the lead single pulsing with industrial grit and a brooding tone that felt closer to 9 Inch Nails than Sunset Strip sleaze.
Do you wanna bleed?
But the strangest moments were yet to come. Glitter reached for balladry in a digital haze, later remixed for radio play. Shout at the Devil 97 reimagined their 1983 anthem, proof that nostalgia could be remixed, but never truly reborn. And then there was Brandon, Tommy Lee's tender ode to his newborn son.
I've been waiting for this day so long. Brandon.
A piano ballad so personal, so out of step with the Crüe's brand, that it became the album's most infamous track. For diehards, it was betrayal. For Tommy, it was vulnerability bleeding into chaos. When Swine hit shelves on June 24, 1997, Curiosity carried it to number 4 on the Billboard charts. For a moment, it looked like the crew had pulled off the impossible relevance in a decade that had no patience for glam excess. But the honeymoon ended fast. Critics called it unfocused. Fans called it confusing. Sales plummeted, and the album quickly became one of their least successful releases. Behind the scenes, tensions boiled. Vince Neil felt sidelined, his voice drowned in effects. Nikki Sixx defended the experiment, insisting the band had to evolve or die. Tommy Lee, caught between fatherhood and fame, poured his heart into Brandon while alienating fans who wanted sleaze, not sentiment. The band had reunited, but unity was an illusion. Today, Generation Swine stands as a strange artifact, not a triumph, not a disaster, but a snapshot of a band caught between eras, glam excess colliding with industrial grit, nostalgia clashing with reinvention. For some, it's a cult curiosity, proof that the crew were willing to risk everything. For others, it's the moment they lost their way. But one thing is certain, in the saga of Mötley Crüe, Generation Swine remains unforgettable, not for what it achieved, but for what it dared to attempt. It's the sound of a band refusing to fade quietly, even if it meant alienating their own fans. And like every chapter in their story, it was messy, loud, and unapologetically motley. In the end, Generation Swine wasn't the comeback fans wanted. It wasn't the disaster critics predicted. It was something stranger, a bold, flawed experiment, a testament to a band that thrived on chaos. And in the world of Mötley Crüe, chaos was always the point. What does your mistress think? While Afraid is a nice little pop song, this album is a crime against metal fan worldwide. While Crüe gave us two of the best albums in the history of metal in their early years, this is an absolute abomination. Swine is proof that bands are best when they stay in their lane.